This is Calicat the Calicatster. Well, we're not on the set of anything yet, but yeah. So yeah, we had company over and relatives for the mom's wake service, I guess you call it, service, and all. And we had Johnny Cook here for about a week. Everyone's gone now, and so I guess this is it. So yeah, we did not really discuss any of the fan films. He's not really a Star Trek person. He's more of a Transformers person and G.I. Joe and stuff like that. Robotech kind of thing. So yeah, so even though we did not discuss that, we can't say, oh, based on a premise by him, really, because he didn't really give us any premises. They had yeah, it's kind of like Mom, with the Mom stories kind of inspiring Transformers Legacy 1, 2, and 3, and the Star Trek Legacy stories. It'd be kind of like that, though, with this, Johnny inspiring a Robotech story without actually having written one. The Transformers Legacy stories were seemingly set in different future time periods. The first one being 2024 this year, the second one being 2030. What was it? 32 and 38 or something like that? Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, it was something like that, yeah. 2038 and then 2040 something, I think, 2045. Yeah, so I think that's what it was. But it didn't matter, because at the end of the last story, it said, oh, it was a Tesseract, they were trapped in there since 2024, and they weren't aging at all. So they were all in there, and because really you weren't seeing a version of Robotech, you were seeing a version of how the aliens was perceived their future. So it's not really the future. They didn't really interfere with the other timeline. They were kept in there. Yeah, I think it was 2024, 2038, and 2040 something, I think is what it was. Yeah, so something like that. I'd have to look it up again. But yeah, I could, I suppose. Yeah, I should probably look that up again. So do that for a second here and try to figure out what's going on. Pause the tape. Yeah, Robotech meets the Transformers, the Sentinel story, Liberations fan film. Came out, Liberations, yeah, the first one. Came out on August 18th, 2023, last summer. The year is 2025. Timeline changed. Robotech Defense Force in this other timeline and G.I. Joe go to the Valkyrie system where Phantoma is located in the story. Vice Admiral Rick Hunter, Lisa Hayes, Max Sterling, and the crew go on a mission, and with Exodor and the crew, the odd thing we did with that one is, I'm not going to read the whole thing, that'd be silly. The Transformers that went with them on that mission in 2025 in the story, they are transmutated when they get there. The Transformers into the Invid and the Robotech Masters. The Shadow and the Invid kind of take them over, and so we have some Autobots and Decepticons that are Decepticons turned into Invid. The Autobots are turned into Masters type / guys, because we didn't really have any. They didn't really make any. They made a few Invid figures back in the day. I think most of them got sold or were destroyed. They were few and far between, and they wouldn't be right for this timeline anyway. So we just said, okay, it wasn't really them. The Veritechs are the Veritechs, so there are G1 Veritech Rebels, Robotech Rebels, because newer Transformers, conversely, were not created of them. Sure, you could go out and find Macross type of stuff, but that would have been really expensive, and wanted to use the stuff we had in that story. It ended up being a mini-series, 3 hours long. It ended up being epic. We wanted to do the Sentinels. The fans always wanted the Sentinels, that spin-off that took place in that alternate run up alongside the other crews in Robotech. Never got done. This is our version. Done with fan stories from the lexicons that were rejected. So we used some of them that were on the cutting room floor and rafted them together to make this story. 2023. really. On September 6th, we launched Part 2. Filmed them all back to back. Challengers. And Part 6, it was 2029. The SDF-38 and the Sentinels and them go to the SDF-38. They go to the second planet, Hadon 4, the fourth planet in the Hadon system. And not Hadrian, but Hadon system. And and they encounter the Regent again in the Regis. And it's also about the Sterlings. And so is Part 3. It's 3 hours again. The Zor Lords are 3 Transformers in this version. And they'll appear later. And yeah, that was that one. Then we learned Robotech the Sentinel Story Destinies, Part 3, which so we showed the battle for Hadon, which would have been the middle book series of the McKinney books. And then, of course, the battle for Optera, the third story. Third half an hour. It is the year 2032 in the story. It's released on September 2023. September 20th, 2023. Early in 2032, the Robotech forces and the Sentinels reach their objective. The Invid homeworld of Optera. The Optera system. Shadow system. In the other story, the Sensor Nebula was a device in the Hadon system that was activated. Hence the Invid coming to Earth. It was not a nebula, because nebulas are really far away. And in Robotech, they just invented terms that they went with. So they go to Optera, the doppelganger gangs and the potboiler detective and all that go on their thing. They're capturing and recapturing of the crew on the ship and on the planet. And the final battle of the Optera and the Invid defeated. Then we jump on to Transformers Legacy, The Quest to Move Planets fan film. But all those Sentinel stories were all 3 hours, so it's 3 new miniseries. And altogether, they're about the same length, or 24 episodes, of the original Transformers Meets Robotech. So Robotech Meets the Transformers sequel series. So then we come to Transformers Legacy, first of which we produced A Quest to Move Planets in March of 2024. Wasn't that long ago. And Transformers turns 40 in the episode. And so we have Prime and the Autobots and crew and the G.I. Joes. They're going to move the planet Wrath out of orbit from some of the other stories, and they're going to move Cybertron out of orbit. And it's a movie, 90-some minute movie, inspired by Bobby Carruthers and Belinda Kelly's stories. Inspired by, but not the same. And then we have Duplicate Volume Online, which was March 19th, because they were filmed back to back. Same idea, but set a little later in the future from the other one. And we have the Autobots, Decepticons, the Transformer Invid, G.I. Joe Cobra, Robotech, vying for power, trying to get a hold of the now returned SDF-3A, which is messed up in the story, and the Robotechs are at odds with each other. It's sort of like a mirror universe timeline. Something ain't right, basically. Then we come to Transformers Legacy Decimation Paradox. Play on Predestination Paradox, basically. And that would give you a clue. Yeah, it's not really what you think it is. That one, April 2nd, 2024. That's when that came out. So, right after Mom died, the day after Mom died, it was in production. It's just going to come out. And 2038 in that story, set in the future. The grown children of the characters and the Zor Lords come together to stop the bad guys again. The Regis shows up, the Regent. And yeah, they discovered that they weren't in 2032, that in fact they were still on the planet ship from the first story. The Robotech people hadn't returned. They weren't there. So it's kind of spoofing the ending of the Robotech series. So that's what was happening. So, yeah, we already did Space Bridge. We already brought everyone home. The only thing, we already did that years ago in 2015 with these Space Bridge. These are later ones. Where does a fan film go from there? I suppose I should briefly explain what Robotech is again. Robotech is Macross and Southern Cross and Space Glamour Messapiado from Japan. A show series that aired in the early 80s up to about 83, 84 roughly. And it was repackaged as Robotech in America by 1985. And it was 65 episodes. They all aired every day over here, but over there they were on the weekends. over here they aired, and they finished. They were 3 discrete series. They were not connected. They somehow connected it to Robotech, but to Rick Hunter and the Expeditionary Force during the second series in the middle of the season, the Southern Cross, and then in the third. But actually, they weren't connected. So there was a cliffhanger at the end of the third one. The Invid invasion story. And Scott Bernard and crew is going to go out and look for Rick Hunter. They never did. In 1987, they promised another series, Robotech the Sentinels. The pilot was released on video later on because they lost their shirt. They couldn't do any more of it. I have the art book and all that stuff. So they were going to do something, but they just never did it. But the Jack McKinney novels did it in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s and 90s, yeah. In 2007, another company, a Tommy Green company, took over and did Robotech the Shadow Chronicles, which was a retelling of the Invid invasion from the point of the Expeditionary Force, cementing in that it is the Expeditionary Force, it is Robotech, Hunter's supposed to be out there, let's go find him. But they don't deliver the goods. They don't find him. Because at the end of that, the studio said, we're not going to do another one. Yet the producers and stuff kept going to conventions and telling people, we're going to totally do another one. They never did. By 2013, they were like, oh, let's just repackage Love Live Alive, which we'd seen on video, as earlier, as a Carl Macek nod because he died. And they're like, okay, here's this movie, and at the end, Lancer implied that Lancer and Cera are having a baby, and that just killed it right there. That's like that studio really didn't want to make any more of those. Yeah, they weren't going to find Rick Hunter. They never did. Fortunately, over there on our fan films, on Transformers Meets Robotech, long earlier, well, technically about 2014 in terms of YouTube universe, but we had done these earlier. We had rewritten the Transformers saga, which we'd written when we were children in high school, and we'd rewritten and posted it and stuff. And we posted up on YouTube this new version of it, which we'd started production on as Transformers Meets Robotech in 2001, right around 9/11, a little bit after 9/11, which was in production for the 3 miniseries. They all ended up being 24 episodes, or a full 9 hours, or 3 hours here, one season, 3 hours for the first season, 3 hours for the next season, 3 hours for the next, 24. So yeah, we did that, and there were 3 of those. I could name them all, but there's really no point. Yeah, let's see, Dark. There was Dark Metal. Metal Shot Doomsday is the first series. Dark Metal Aftermath and Dark Catharsis were the 3 series, like Robotech 3 series. There was no Sentinels in there, but they implied it. And during all that, which took between 2001 and 2009, well, Dad passed away in 2009. So between that, yeah, they went on DVD and video around here locally. The internet had started and it blossomed into a thing. We put them on the internet, yeah. But they had rules on the internet about music and using copyrighted music or whatever. So if there was music, I had to strip it out. And the first one had music in it, so we had to strip that out, change it. My own bizarre, made-up music. And back then, it was very bizarre. I don't know what I was thinking. So we did that, and put it on early YouTube. It was, I think the first version of it was lost, but then there was another one on the other channel. So that's this channel, Weird Kitty 07 channel. 2007 channel, posted it in 2014, reposted the whole series. And with the caveat that in 2015, by 2015, there would be a new one, a new episode. But what we were doing was Transformers Meets Robotech was reinventing the Trans series, which no one was ever going to see ever. And so So we did a new one called Transformers: The End of the Circle. I adapted for a 90-minute story. Well, for 65 at first, and then we expanded to 90 minutes because figured there were some things missing. It wasn't really filler. It was plot holes, so I had to fix them. That's basically what it was. So yeah, I added up to almost 90 minutes, so it's like 90 minutes to fix the errors in there for 15 more minutes because I didn't know what I was doing. And we put this together 2015 as Transformers Robotech Space Bridge. Now the initial story from earlier, so YouTube fans would think, oh, that other series just came out in 2014. All 24 episodes aired all at once, kind of like Netflix later on. Yeah, we weren't thinking of that. We just posted it all at once. That's all. Yeah, and then this other one, Into the Circle, loosely based on the McKinney books, continues the saga. But the last one, we fixed that cliffhanger at the end of Transtech. Rick Hunter and crew were taken away to another universe through the wormhole. They were taken away to the Transformers universe, and they hung out with the Transformers. That's where they were. That's why they incidentally weren't found in the Tommy Yoon stories, which aired in the middle of this. By movie, when we were in production on part 2 of the season 2 of our series of fan films, the Dark Metal Aftermath, that Robotech Shadow Chronicle came out. And it still didn't work, so we're still like, no, we're going to show the end of how we're going to get Rick Hunter home at the end of this story. So there's like there's an ending where at the end of the third one, when we finish the third one, he gets home. So, because they didn't do it there either. So, our fan film is the first known one in which they have a scene where at the end of the whole thing, after the wormhole opens, the black hole thing spits them out, wormhole thing, there's this triumphant moment, spine-tingling moment where they contact the thing, they realize the fold system is messed up again, and they're like, oh no, now we're stuck again, And the expedition, it gives me chills even now. The Expeditionary Force contacts them, and it's Vince Grant and Scott Bernard, and they're all like, oh, you made it back. Rick Hunter, you're back. You're home. And they're like, and there's a breath of fresh air, and yay, they're home. Roll credits. The Robotech saga is complete. Then then along comes a year later, in terms of how you're watching this. A year later comes this End of the Circle story where they try to find the Regent, who has assumed the form of a Transformer who's on a planet. And he's a green Transformer, James Spader voice going on. That's who the voice is, James Spader. It's not really him, but it's imitating him. It's also imitating him. It's Werewolf Fuzzy Face, I believe is who that was. And so, but yeah, so we're doing the voice and having the thing, and it turns out the Regent and the Regis are in it, because the Regis, they're all really energy beings, so technically if Sierra and the others would be there, because they're energy beings, they're creatures, they're why would they even take the Earth if they're energy beings? They wouldn't need to. They're not biological. They never really explained that. Makes more sense in the Japanese version. In the In-Bit Invasion, or Space Climber Matsupieta, because in that version they said, okay, they wanted something else. They wanted their life force. It's still a little silly, but at least it makes more sense than the flowers of life that they were cultivating to steal the life force. It's kind of what they were doing. So it wasn't that there was crashed mounds of the SDF-1 and stuff. It was that they were building these mounds to like speed evolution or something. That was what they were doing. It makes a little more sense that they were trying to like colonize and take over the Earth than it does, because they lost their planet. Then it does, the Masters were stealing their protoculture flowers. That wasn't it in the Japanese version. They had an entirely different motivation. And then they realized that the human race is the ideal group for them, and they leave. Before the Expeditionary Force is about to blast them, and when they leave, they destroy the Expeditionary Force on the way out. And Scott Bernard isn't going back to Rick Hunter, because in that timeline, in the Japanese version, Rick Hunter isn't even there. He's not even a thing. It's another series by the same people, and it wasn't connected. And Scott Bernard is just returning to Mars, where the Mars base is. That's all. Which is kind of anticlimactic, but that's what he's doing. And the other one that was on Earth, but the middle one, Southern Cross, which was actually filmed, which is actually later, but they made it earlier in Robotech. Southern Cross takes place on a planet called Liberta. one of the planets in the story, and it's a planet similar to Earth, but it has 2 moons. And so Space Knights, basically, versus the Robotech Masters, or the Zor Lords. So, yeah, that's kind of what they got the Sentinels idea, sort of, from that. And Dana Sterling's story and all that. In the original, it's not Dana Sterling. There's no connection to the Robotech, the Sterling's Rick Hunter, and the Japanese one. It's just La Belle Liberta, and her Maya Liberta, I think is her name, in that story. And she's just same kind of thing as Dana Sterling, but she's not Dana Sterling. She's just someone else. And there's no connection to the Expeditionary Force. It's just, Mars and Jupiter show ups, and they fight. So yeah, the Robotech did crazy things. And later on, we did some sequels. In 2016, we did the Bioship Mystery 1 and 2, and then 2018 updated both of those with another one. Then there was the Shadow Children and the Shadow Children Return, 2018. Then we started doing more of them. We had we did some more Transformer stories a little later, starting with the I believe it might have been off, but yeah, we started with new stories taking place in the universe of the during the pandemic had started. So what we did is it was all in the house. I did stuff in house, and conference called in to Mark's cards, and I did all Transformers Mush. We found the stuff from way back in Robotech land, and from on a disc, these early old Transformers Mush stories, which we later learned were copied onto lexicons and other places. Back then, we didn't know, and we compiled some new discrete episodes. I did about 2 seasons of that, of new Transformers fan film stories, catching us up to the 2020s, and also released heavily edited out the music, just commentary track versions of Trans-Tech, the original Trans, because we were doing Transformers fan films before there were Transformer fan films. We were doing them in the 80s while the show was airing. The first 2 Trans stories are from literally the first season of Transformers. That's really back far, right? You can't go further back than that. So we were doing them way back when in the 80s. We wanted to show those 80s ones, the 80s and 90s ones that led to Trans-Tech in the 2000s and 2010s. And we did. And then we did these new lexicon ones, which were kind of like that. So fans were doing it by the 90s. They were doing their own versions. They even did some that homaged our presence on Trans-Tech, which was awesome. So we had to, if they're going to do some of our stuff, we got to do some of theirs. And we did. So we came up with a whole host of other things. We did then we did lexicons, Transformers lexicons in 2021, 2022. 7 or 8 new episodes from Lexicon's series, and there was some left over for that back to the Robotech story. There was some left over for Robotech meets the Transformers, and so Transformers meets Robotech, the Sentinel story, and we did those 3. And then appears this new one, the Legacy, from a few months ago. Did it more like up to April. We did sort of a pseudo-future other Sentinel story, sort of. The way it was structured, it was written like, okay, here's the distant future, but it's weirder and weirder as they go, and it wasn't that we painted ourselves into a corner; it's that we intended to do it this way. It was sort of like, the second half of The End of the Circle, the book version, the storybook by McKinney. In part of that was like a simulation, and they were trapped in it for like 50 pages or something. So we did something like that. We said like the third one is like the book. So it's a spiritual sequel to the Trans-Tech Space Bridge stuff. And yeah, and the Sentinel stuff. But it's not really the sequel. It's not. That whole story was up until when the Transformers flew the planet ship into the thing. The Robotech people we see later in those 3 stories were Robotech people conjured by the Primes and the other pseudo-Primes in that realm. So the part where they get back at the end of the Sentinel story, part 1 is the real story. Sentinel story 1, 2, and 3 is the real story. And then they get back in that timeline. And the Robotech timeline is completely discrete and on its own. And the Space Bridge timeline is kind of discrete and on its own until it skews into this timeline, like Back to the Future and Marvel. So, basically, all that, there's a clean slate. Whatever happens to the Robotech people post 2030 happens to them either in the other timeline or this one. And there's your hook. It's like, what happened if the other timeline met the Robotech timeline? They talked or hung out or something. There's your concept. I don't know what you want to do with that. But that'd be cool. And maybe it's not that it's a mirror reflection or they're necessarily evil, but the story would be more like man versus nature and man versus himself kind of deal. It wouldn't have a Nemesis Prime type of deal. It'd be more like, well, the Star Trek stories you just did with a different thing. It'd be kind of a little bit like that. Rick Hunter wouldn't be evil, of course, but there would be sort of a disparate concept. There has to be a villain of some kind. Whether the villain is a character wanting... You don't want to have a character wanting revenge. That's so cliched. It's better to have like a character who's lost or unguarded or something. It would be a lot of fun to have also homage the stuff that comes later in Macross 7, in some way, where Captain Max Sterling and Captain Miria kind of set that up a little bit too. But we're not going to do that. We're not going to do Macross 7 and Becerra's band Firebomber. We're not doing that again. We already did that with Space Bridge, the Shadow Children, and the Shadow Children Return. Because the Union people never did the Shadow Children. They never did the sequel. I did. I did the sequel in 2018. I did that. So that sets up this timeline that we're in now. So with the Sentinel story being 2018 and then lines up beautifully with 2022, 2024. Lines up beautifully. So so here we are in 2024. It's only been a few months since the other one. We went on hiatus to do some Star Trek, and now we're some Transformers. The Transformers one from a while ago, and now we're back. So let's see what's going on. I'm not sure if we can crank another one out in the next 2 weeks. That would be crazy, but at least we can write a script that works. A nice polished script. It won't be a 3-part series, or if they said that about Legacy. But I was going through title ideas, and I came up with the title idea, the Legacy of Rick Hunter. So it ties into the legacy thing, implying mom thing, but it's not really. She had nothing to do with it. John Cook only gave some ideas about what he wants in fan film type of thing after watching the Planet of the Apes movie. Consultant, basically in the credits, I guess. He's gone back up north. But yeah, he didn't write a story. It's just like we kind of came up with ideas watching football games and stuff. This would be interesting to do this in a fan film at some point. Didn't know what kind of fan films really I was doing. I didn't really want to go over that. He didn't listen to it anyway. But yeah, the idea that we have a discrete story situation of the characters doing something not like the Planet of the Apes where there's a bad guy at the end and he's like ah ha ha ha, not like the Invidence Warlords and all that. The planet Liberta will probably be some central location of the story. They'll actually get to see it instead of them blowing it up and pretending it's not there anymore, because they were in the Tesseract in the last one, so they weren't really there. It wasn't really the future, and they weren't really encountering the Robotech people. The Sentinel story is where that really ended. And then there's the other story where they show it's 2050 something and they're older in that one too. That also is canon. So there's this goofy... That was from the lexicons. The end of Mush, actually. Mush. It doesn't matter what all these names are. The point was that they want to emphasize once again that Rick Hunter and Max Sterling will return. That's kind of the gist of what's going on. That they would return. We get the Robotech people. We get their children who are now grown. We get an adventure on the SDF-3A once again. And that's what the fans really want anyways. And Robotech stuff and neat references. And yeah, so yeah, so it's an alternate universe again. You kind of have a clean slate. You kind of have a lot to work with. And so, so we'll see what. Yeah, you don't really need to worry about any of that other backstory, really, because, going back to the original Prince and even Trans Tech, they're already home as far as we're concerned. They came back. So they're already back, so it's fine. Yeah, and when we opened End of the Circle, we showed the scene where they get rescued again, and in 2015, and that scene is slightly different, but better animation and stuff. So yeah, this one will be even better than that. Probably have to have some sort of probably do that scene again, just because it just gives you goosebumps and shivers to know that Rick Hunter returns home, because reasons. In the Transformer universe, yeah. He returns home at the end of the Sentinel story as well. And he says the Sentinel story's over. I'm back in that one too. So the end of the Zor Primes would return. The Zor Primes. Incidentally, there was a Zor Prime. Zor Prime was Zor in the other story. So there's the word Prime is in Transformers and Robotech. You kind of get that idea. Also, Skyfire Jetfire is a Robotech, but he's also a Transformer. So. I know they have a new one that they built, a Masterpiece one, but there's no way I could afford that. So I have to use the one from the show instead. If I'm going to use Jetfire, and of course Jetfire would have to be there somewhere. It have to involve primes as well, yeah. So the planet ship got rescued, it turns out, in another timeline, and they didn't need to worry about it because the timeline got retconned. Or you could use the effect of saying the Prime Demigods guy, the timeline actually did skew while the Tesseract was going on and they were trapped in it. And they took them back to earlier, so the timeline is no longer skewed. You could also assume that it's not a dream and it's not a simulation. Those events did happen in the pocket universe, but it did not affect the greater universe. It just affected that little pocket universe. Sort of like in the Flash movie, when it's a pocket universe. It didn't affect anything else, just where he was. And then the other Flash fights him at the end and they go through the thing. Tooth falls. Anyway, kind of like that. DC and Marvel and Transformers. And Marvel originally did the comic books for Transformers. It's connected indirectly to Marvel and Disney, even though now it's Paramount. So, yeah, I'll have to come up with an awesome Robotech story with Rick Hunter. Cool. And we'll see some corrections from that Robotech thing is real brief, kind of. Yeah, the planet name wasn't Liberta. Liberty was the station. Apparently the planet in Space Cavalry Southern Cross was called Glory. Glory. It sounds like Glory Hole. Let's not use that. The various other characters aren't important, but don't use that. If you're going to do another story, just do your own thing. Yeah, there's no reason to overthink that into something else. As for the other stuff, like the other ones, like the creative little Transformers Legacy thing you did, yeah, you do your own thing, because it doesn't matter. you have a story that if you come up with a story to tell, then tell that. Yeah, certainly if with Macross and Macross Frontier coming to Disney Plus for some reason, I don't know what, it's a rumor anyway. That's kind of weird because it's not Disney. It would be, well, I guess it would be kind of Sony, but I don't think it really technically is. So that would make sense. But yeah, that's weird. So yeah, Glory. And Southern Cross was a weird middle chapter that was considered the lesser of the two. Set in the 22nd century, even. But this story would need to be set when in the late 2040s, early 2050s, just because that's the end of the other stuff, and they would be older, just to make it make sense. As a Robotech story, yeah, and they meet each other. You could even do like the Apes movie did and say, in the generation later, or whatever. Don't explain it. That probably would be better. So you have, yeah. So there's ideas that might work. We'll come up with something. So those other trans tech stories, those are great. Those are separate universes, separate things. Space Bridge is its own thing. The Shadow Children, Shadow Chronicles is its own thing. all that. It's kind of its own deal. But Shadow's Return and Shadow Children were a sequel to Space Bridge and Bioship Mystery, so they're kind of their own thing. So that Transformers Mush, all Transformers Mush and Transformers Legacy really were kind of their own thing too, and they weren't all connected to each other necessarily. Robotech meets the Transformers, as opposed to Transformers meets Robotech, was an attempt to do a sequel to that other miniseries, that other the third 9-hour miniseries. So that's what that was. And yeah, we succeeded with that one. And they go forward in time, and everything's all right. In the series, they go to each planet. Liberta was probably chosen in the Sentinel story because it wasn't Glory, and Glory just sounds weird. So we chose Liberta instead. We don't have to go there. That's not important to the story. We've already been to Terra and all that stuff. We've been to the Master's Planet and all that stuff. What would they do from there if they were going to do more Robotech? What would they have been allowed to do in the time of Masek and whatever? What would they have done? It isn't just a matter of showing more. It was part of the problem with all the spin-offs they tried to do, like Robotech 3000 and whatever, was that they didn't have an idea, they just had a story. Or they didn't have a story, they just had a premise. Like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if the Veritech looked different? Like, that's not a story, though. That's just an idea. Yeah, okay, fine, it looks different. So what? Yeah, and if they ever do a live-action Robotech fans would be very disappointed if it wasn't all Japanese. Kind of has to be. You kind of have to do that because Robotech is a very Japanese show. Let the guys that did Finally Yamato do it. They do it with Japanese actors. Because, Lin Min Mei cannot be a white girl. She's got to be Japanese. Absolutely, a Japanese pop singer. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. So yeah, do that. So, there's Robotech. And, we didn't really include Min-Mei in their Sentinels thing. I think just because it would have been awkward to shoehorn her in somewhere. And I realized that the last minute scene seems heavily cut where they have the concert in the Sentinel story. But, that's what I gotta do. I guess I'll throw in some Q&A here just to add some gravitas and flavor to the story. That was one of the things asked in the Q. Why would you make a Robotech the Sentinel story and not include Min-Mei? Well, she actually isn't in the Robotech the Sentinels books, very briefly. So we just followed along with what they were doing. And at the end, they show up and she's got a different life entirely. Lynn Kyle is completely different. All that association is completely changed. As we're in a slightly different timeline with our version of the Sentinels. Kind of had to do that because we couldn't follow exactly the McKinney scripts. We don't have those. And Call the Books, we don't really have those anymore. So we did our own thing based on the Transformer stuff. Another question that was asked is, what's this doppelgangers and Talomsky and all that other story and the weird sort of space kidnapping bad guy who's Cobra Commander? Why is all that going on? And there's not a lot of Robotech mecha fighting and stuff. It's mostly this weird little backstory of sitcom, not really a sitcom, a drama on the planet. That is Tail Aarons. He was an author from the Transformers Lexicons, and his stories of the Testament Saga. We adapted the Testament Saga as the Sentinel story. Mainly the last two books. A lot of it actually is that. Some Raksha stuff, some Shiba stuff, some Roy stuff, but mainly Tail Aarons. So that was what that is, and we changed it considerably, really. Talomsky is one of his characters, but yes, we did. The Zorlord Prime guy showing up is our invention, and what about where they came from? They made of a triumvirate sort of thing. They're a little goofy. So they come out. Got Scout is one of the primes, and we've got Artemis is one of the primes, or Laser Prime, one of the primes. and Tall Spike has one of them. Yeah, who's a other ones ask, so what is why did so Ritter and Tall Spike seem to be from something else? They seem to look like from something else. They are from a Transformers toy pack, Transformers meets Street Fighter crossover toy pack. They literally are that from that. It's M Bison and Gaiju Street Fighter. It's literally what they are. M Bison is Ritter and the other one is. It looks like It looks like M Bison is a bit of a retool of Blitzwing, possibly, or Megatron. I think it's possibly Blitzwing. And the other one is a retool of Octane as a Prime, which is kind of funny. Oh. Laser Prime. Why did Laser Prime sometimes have a lady's voice? Well, in this version of it, Laser Prime Artemis is named after a character from Lexicons instead, and we just didn't have a figure for her, so we had him play that figure. That's all. So she's a girl now. Because they would just change her voice box and it'd be a girl. Yeah, so. Yeah. Oh, so yeah, the primes. The other weird question is, okay, how did the primes tie in to things? And the primes are, well, the primes in the story of the 13 primes, but 2 or 3 of them are other associated primes because it's really not a canon thing. And we're introduced to in Transformers 1, the new movie that's coming out, to other versions of that. Mostly the Alpha Trion, it looks like from the trailer, not to the other one. So the 13th Prime in that one is Alpha Trion. Then they don't really. It doesn't appear they mention the other ones. But yeah, and Optimus Prime would be the next one after that. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. So what is the connection between Primary and Prima? Well, in one of the continuities, Transformers is a multiverse, Prima and Primary are the same thing. Prima is the premier alien force that created the Transformers. It's the mother of all Transformers, and created all of the other ones. And it's sort of an Earth Mother kind of deal going on. It's unclear if she is Primus's wife or if she's Primus's mother. It's very Freudian, very Freudian. I'm thinking very Greek tragedy as well. I think what's going on is, at least from the terms of the multiverse we set up, is that she is a creation of Primus, which makes it make more sense. She's one of Primus's first creations, and she's related to Primary, and incidentally, the first Decepticon, because he turns on himself. So she's the Lilith of that universe. She's in the Apocrypha of the Christian Bible. In one of the apocryphal stories, there's a Lilith before there's an Eve. So I think that's what they're kind of getting at. She's a Lilith before Eve that was kicked out first, became the first, the mother of the demon bad guys, the Decepticons, Megatronus, and the Fallen is Megatronus, because the Fallen turned on her and killed her. Yeah, out of jealousy for the other guy that liked her, the other Transformer. And it couldn't be Primus, really. It had to have been another guy, another child of Primus. So it was like a Cain and Abel thing with a Lilith thing kind of thrown in. Even though it was before. Yeah, it's kind of weird. They didn't think about it. They just made it that way. What was going on? So they just... Yeah. And it's a little confused because I believe there's two or three different versions of Animus Prime and Nova Prime and Onx Prime, and they kind of all do something similar. So it's like, well, the one with the transformation cogs is shown in Transformers 1, but it appears to be just Alpha Trion giving them the cogs instead of Onx Prime. But it's like, oh, okay, fine. I'm sure they didn't think it through. They just did their own thing, and that's fine. It's perfectly fine to do their own thing. We didn't. We tried to think it through with ours and just got lost, kind of. So when we show them in the other realm, we just throw in some of our own primes as well, just for fun. And yeah. And yeah, another note is who the hell is Top Spinus Prime and Skyfarer's Prime? Well, what's the commentary on the trans movies? They are meant to be the other primes who bared other matrices in the trans stories. Yes, that's an extremely deep cut in joke, but yeah, so I suppose they are. Yeah, and they appear as Jetfire's Prime in the other one. That's all. Yeah. So in the Prime universe, in the Tesseract, in the realm, the Forge of Solace, they're still there, and their descendants are still there. So Top Spinus and Skyfirers are just future Optimus Primes, that future Primes. That's all that have got back. They're sort of like Time Lords or something. Vector Prime brought them to help with the incident in the Tesseract after the planet ship crashed into it. That's all. Yeah, sure. Why not? They said they're from another universe. There, yeah, in the story. There. Top Spinus Prime was all. I'm from this other universe where Optimus Prime died and I became a Prime. And Skyfire kind of says the same thing. I became a Prime. So they're both the 14th Prime from different universes. There. Or different universes. Then they help out Animus and Alchemist Prime and Alchemist Prime to solve the Tesseract story and to patch up the universe. And yeah. So Raksha, what is that connection? What's that Moonracer thing? What's all that? Go into that briefly again, just for fun. So long and the short of it is in the 1990s, a character known as colloquially on all Transformers Mush named Raksha liked Decepticons. Thought the Decepticons should be the good guys. And went to conventions and was very outspoken and strange, and also kept snakes. So she's kind of a Lilith. There you go. And there's a connection. And she got the chance to deal with the BotCon Hasbro people somehow that did the BotCon toys, and got a Decepticon named after her who was a little Bumblebee variant, a little jump starter, power dasher kind of variant. 1985. Called Night Racer, little car, Bumblebee variant. Yeah, it looks like kind of like Bumblebee with a little bit of the jump starters, a little bit of the. It actually looked more like less like Bumblebee from that era, and more like Bumblebee from the Michael Bay movies. Actually, kind of. So yeah, there's that Night Strike Bumblebee is basically a Moonracer, and then the Bumblebee movie has Shatter and her friend in there, and they look like that as well a little bit. So it's like, okay, yeah. So she's also Night Racer. And Transformers Prime also had a blue version of Power Up Bumblebee that sort of looked like that. But it was first introduced with Hotshot and the other variants of Hotshot in going back to Hotshot and Sideburn and RID Series 1 in 2001 and later ones. And Armada. But yeah, she's meant to be someone else. And originally in the Japanese, Hotshot from Armada was meant to be Hot Rod, but they just called him Hotshot here. It's not meant to be Hot Rod. Which makes that character make a whole lot more sense. It's just Hot Rod. Yeah. So yeah, that's fun. So yeah, Raksha. Okay, right back to Raksha. She did a couple of other guys, Transformers and things over the years, and then disappeared off the internet, interwebs. She wrote some stories, some of which we've adapted as episodes on fan film, including one of the ones from the Sentinel story, one of those stories about the mind control robot thing and the lady. One of the Scythe of Destiny stories, the Scythe of Destiny. Yes, we know it's a sickle and not a scythe, but that's what we called it. But yeah, he was supposed to be a fallen type of character too. He was one of the Dracotronus Prime. Yeah, he was another of the fallen. Similar. He also had prime powers. Ooh, so yeah, Dracotronus. So yeah, there's a connection to the Dracotron guy from earlier, the Predaking, that guy. The other guy from Beast. Yeah, so there's all these weird connections because there's all these time travel weird things going on in the multiverse. Not as confusing as Marvel though, although Transformers used to be partly a Marvel property, so of course it's going to be a little confusing. But yeah, Raksha. Actually, we didn't meet her until around 2023. Well, we had a convention, a comic convention in San Jose, and then Raksha and the Snake People were going to be there. We had this episode. We were talking about the episode and the episodes and stuff, and said, "Oh, there's a sneak preview thing over on the channel. We're going to meet somebody from the All Transformers Rush. We're going to meet them at a convention. And we're not going to say which one. We did the convention, and the other one, we did the commentary, and there's the Snake People, and yeah, she was there. So we encountered the Snake Lady. Excellent. Yeah, we talked to the Snake Lady and the handler." But we didn't get her picture. She said, "Oh, no, just the snake and my hand. That's it." So we don't have her picture, but she was there. Yeah, I'm not famous. Only if you were in Decepticon garb, then I would have taken a picture with you. but yeah, but that's funny. So there we are. Yeah, so, and if it was another Raksha, then we apologize for the mix-up and confusion. I think it was her. Yeah, I'm pretty darn sure it was her. Yeah, but yeah, the primes. Yeah, we're probably not going to explore the universe Tesseract thing again in the story. At least come up with a new one. It's a little confusing, but what was going on there was that all of the events in Transformers Legacy were kind of trapped after the planet ship goes boom. And the following two movies were still set in 2024 in Transformers Legacy, not in the Sentinel story, Transformers Legacy. But they didn't know they were not in the future in 2038, whatever. They didn't know they were trapped in there till 2038. They didn't know. So when they were pulled out, they were all right. But at the end, they have that weird ending scene where they go to the Robotech Masters and they go meet them. And they pulled them out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, your Robotech people have to go back to your timeline so that you'll be ready to meet up with the Transformers in the real future, and your Master people have to go over here where you're going to meet these other guys in your future. We'll send you guys back to your universe and the Transformers will send you back to your universe, back to 2024, so you can go meet, and still kind of remember that something weird happened, that something wasn't right, that something changed, but yeah, And even Chip Chase, who was resurrected in that first story, gets his own other destiny somewhere else, and has changed. Partly because the toy was very shiny, and yeah, just changed the toy to Twin Twist, Twin Twistimus Prime, Twin Twistimus, and Top Spinus Prime, and yeah, that is a Diaclone variant because that version of Twin Twist is a copy of the one that never came out here, so I got the Diaclone one instead. Did that with Sandstorm as well. Never got the other version of the other guy. Right, Ramjet, but the other G2 Ramjet is similar to him. Yeah, well, some of the Seekers. It was cool that I had included the Seekers. So Primary is supposed to be a descendant of Prima, the Primary in the story. A fan from Lexicons wrote Primary. That's kind of a Primary. And they wrote that character. And it was Chromia who wrote it. I don't know what this person is. I just used one of her stories. And it was and Primary was doing various things. She was a Decepticon girlfriend of Megatron, but we made it Galvatron in the story. And he essentially murders her, and then they resurrect her. Yeah, they rebuild her. That was in the story, so yeah, we adapted the story. And she was an ex-girlfriend from way back, and she was with Ultra Magnus. That was in the story. I think she was with somebody. Was she actually with Ultra Magnus? I think she was. Yeah. So it was Ultra Magnus and Galvatron. So it would have been like an early Ultra Magnus. His ex, she married Ultra Magnus or got with him after Megatron, and Megatron has to go rescue. Magnus is a rescuer from Megatron, and Magnus has to save her and all that. Classic story idea. Hero goes to rescue his second wife from space. She wasn't meant to be a prime, but I decided to make it more prime-like because her name was Primary. But it meant to be like Prima's descendant. Also, and then that begs the question: so who is Solus Prime, who is also called the first Decepticon? Well, so in the other version of the story, Solus Prime is the one that gets killed by Megatronus in Rage, and he becomes the Fallen, right? So in at least two of the continuities, but they're not totally official. Only really Quintus Prime and Alpha Trion are official. So I think what's going on is Solus Prime is the daughter of Prima, and she's one of the daughters of Prima. She's one of Primus's creations. Otherwise, it's confusing. So they're all Primus's creations. She would be Primus' sister, just to make it make sense. Twin sister. Even though there's not from another slightly off dimension, I guess, or something. They're just Primary has the spark of Solus Prime, as well as some others do. And that's how that works, I guess. Solus Prime, if she's the descendant of Primary, becomes the other one. That's how they're able to go to the Forge of Solus Prime and open it. Because in Transformers Prime, another Prime thing, it seemed a little silly that she was... It seemed silly that she was a sort of... That the Forge was simply her hammer. She was Thor, basically. No, and then in this version, I make it way cooler and say, like, okay, Solus Prime, the daughter of all Transformers, the godmother of the Transformers, Primus's first creation. The name Solus Prime refers to his wife, not his daughter Prima, and Prima is actually the one that got killed by Megatronus, her brother, and consorts, because they were, like, messing around. And that makes more sense. That straightens that out. And the Forge of Solus Prime is not just one place and one weapon and one cache in space. It is a place where Cybertron itself was forged. The whole planet. They're demigods. They have forged planets. Unicron was forged there. A Tornadron and Wrath were forged there. Wrath being a planetoid kind of thing, similar to Unicron, which makes your ambitions go up and down and stuff. Originally in the Belinda originally in the stories, it was just a place they go to on a planet, but I decided to make a whole planet. Sounded better. Because Tornadron kind of had similar ideas. Tornadron would suck your life force from you. This planet slowly sucks your life force from you. Or it messes you up, traps you on the planet. That's a cool idea. So, let's show this planet where they're being messed with. Kind of like Web World in Season 3 of Transformers with a mindfuck shrink aliens. Except the planet is a shrink. It's messing with their heads, yeah, basically. And the whole planet, it's like alive and it's messing with them. Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah. So maybe that was Wrath. Maybe in Season 3 that was the Wrath planet floating around with those shrink aliens on it. Head shrink aliens. That was probably Wrath, yeah. So it's canon. I'm going to say it's canon, yeah. The Cyclonus takes Galvatron there and messes with him. And then we go back to Diane Duane from Star Trek, who wrote that episode. Yeah, so... Anyway, so yeah, the whole idea of these different aspects of Primus. You have to have like a Mentalist Primus kind of idea, weird messing with you kind of thing. You have to have like planet of that planet, Cybertron, and Cybertron is where Primus was then dying and put his essence into the Allspark, the Matrix thing and whatever. They live forever inside the planet, so as the master computer, as the Matryoshka, as the the supercomputer is running the planet. It can also transform. And only some Transformers have been Cybertron can transform. And it would be the antithesis of Unicron. Although some have said Unicron's in the Earth or something. Some of the later stories. And it's like, no. Unicron was never in the Earth. That's dumb. That timeline does not make sense to do that. There could be a piece of Unicron on the Earth, sure. But Unicron cannot be the Earth. Unicron is its own thing, and Primus in the Forge. So the Forge of Solus Prime is where they built the Transformer planets, Unicron and Cybertron. basically. That's where they built them. So they brought one of them back there, basically. They took one of them back. Because that made more sense than Gaikini was like a little Minicon guy building Unicron. No, he was just a herald of him. He didn't build it. He just helped him build it. He's not the creator of all that. He's just he's an aspect of it. He's a minion. Yeah. An aspect of it. A harbinger. Like the Scourge guy was. Of that series thing. It's very, very strange. What kind of a weird Transformer religion do they have? Like, is there the machine planet, like, building, them being machines, they build planet. It makes sense that, like, they'd have sort of a strange idea of good and evil being literally very, actually, not shades of gray, but very literal. Just program it to be good or evil. And the Quintessons are in there too. I like how the newer version of the series kind of has as a Quintus Prime that built the Quintessons, and thus led to the other ones. And he's there too. He's one of the early. So there's like this. So it's like the Celestials in Marvel. It's like the Celestials, Galactus, and all those guys. They built the first Celestials, and that which is also similar to the gods and the Titans from Greek mythology. It's kind of what they're doing. And so you have in Greek mythology, you have the gods and the Titans go to war, and the Titans beat the gods, and then they went down and did their other things. So it's like it's the second generation and the third generation, and then time of Plato and Ptolemy is like later, fourth generation. So yes, fourth generation later, and yeah, so that's kind of what's going on. So yeah. So, yeah, that's a little confusing. Primus, the 13 Primes came later. The 13 Primes had to have come later, including Solus and Megatronus. They had to be like Generation 2 or 3 after Primus and Prima and other ones, because who built them? Well, the guy that built them was... the guy that put them together was the Alchemist Prime, and they built the Transformers. Quintus Prime and Alchemist Prime helped to build the Transformers, and Onyx Prime helped to build the Transformers. So the second generation built the Transformers, and it's imbibed in them personalities and stuff. Then they began to build them en masse, using the Quintessons as their constructor force thing. The Quintessons went in and they were half biological. I think they gradually they were probably started out as biological techno-organic beings and gradually became more and more mechanical as they went. Yeah, that's what I figure. And so by the time they got to the war between Megatronus and Solus, it was Solus 3. It was even 4. It could have been several millennia later, or even more so than that if they were already Transformers. They were already machines. So they were clearly later. So yeah, that war between Solus and Megatronus, the Fallen, and all that is later. In Generation 3, when they were already Transformers. And she becomes the mother of the Decepticons because they allied with him to construct the war machines. Because they were all consumer goods originally. Everybody was like generic consumer good robots after they were robots. And they wanted to make war machines now because they wanted to fight. After he was Fallen was dumped Solus and Gelsat. I'm going to build war machines to fight those Autobots and get back at them. So he did. He became Megatronus the Fallen and built the Decepticons. The Decepticons were thus formed. And she was technically the mother of the Decepticons because that's what inspired him to make this the group that would become the Decepticons. Which they will explore a little bit in Transformers 1. So yeah. Although it appears that that's the third generation of Primes right there. So, we'll see. I'm okay with it. It's a little silly, but then again, the show kind of was. It was not meant to think that deeply about it. But yeah, the Primes are everywhere. So I threw in some of my own, but yeah, it's still fun. And if they're from another timeline, well, that's fine. You can do that in a story, just so that character makes sense. The thing that bogs down something like, say, the Eternals with the Celestials, is they didn't properly explain why we're supposed to care about them. Yeah, The same kind of problem with the Zack Snyder movies as well, that you don't care about them. Same idea as you have. I won't go into the tirade about either of those, but just to say that if you have a heroic character, Transformer or something, and he's a robot and he gets emotions like a human or something, you have to the show and tell thing. Well, the show don't tell. I keep explaining that is, don't just narrate everything in succession. Let the characters show you the information that's coming forth. Even a text scroll is technically weird. If they a character behaving heroically is better than a character saying I am a hero, or behaving a bad guy stealing stuff out of the thing and being sneaky and conniving tells you he's bad somehow. Whereas if he just says I'm evil and twiddles his mustache, then that's not as much fun. You have to kind of build up characters and stuff and how their motivations are. You can't just be archetypes of different things. It was fun playing with the primes doing that, having them be characters. Archetypes of things. You know what I want to do with this footage about Robotech and the other thing? I'm going to put this on the other channel with the other footage, and I'm going to make this part of a sort of a retro. I think I'm going to do that, because I'm not really talking about anything new yet. Well, and that channel hasn't had any updates. So. No, scratch that. Make this just this channel. I think it works generally as a thing. It's not. I do fan films. And I don't think they're very confusing if you explain, the end of that last one where the Transformers are like, well, it's not really the future. You could take it both ways there. You could say maybe it was the future, but the time one, Vector Prime messed with it. Now it isn't. Yeah, so you could say that. You can interpret it that way. They pulled him back through time. Everything's fine now. Yeah. All of 12 Monkeys. Classic movie. Yeah. Or Back to the Future, or, or The Avengers, or any one of those movies. Done something similar. It's not exactly Back to the Future logic, though, because they've kept the timeline, the skewed timeline there, but they've gone back and jumped into a slightly different but similar timeline, so they're kind of in their own thing, which could create a problem for the Robotech people later on, because they would encounter that other altered. Exactly. There's your hook. Yeah, for the other thing. And they're like, what? I'm this other guy in this. What happened? So it's not their evil twins necessarily. It's their zone thing. Space Robotech zone thing. The primes. Yeah, the primes thing is kind of complicated, and you don't need to worry about it. It's the prima is sort of primary. Primary is sort of like Solus's Prime's descendant. So are all the Decepticons, for that matter. and also, they said that they revealed that Bludgeon, the reason he's so good at being Metallico guy is because he's a descendant of one of the other primes, the Amalgamus Prime, the Trickster Prime, Amalgamus, yeah. He's one of them, so that's how you can do that. So it isn't that he was just really good at training. It's that distantly in the past, his ancestor was one of the Trickster God Decepticon guys. So he knew what he was doing. That's all. It's kind of like saying he's predestined to do stuff. Although he couldn't have been that good, because that one guy shot him. And they had to bring it back. So he wasn't that good at what he was doing. Clearly he was deluded a little bit. His genetic power was clearly a little screwed up. And Starscream is also, in that story, kind of big demigod, because Starscream is supposed to already be dead and then resurrected in Beast Wars like 300 years from now. So that's why they kept saying, oh, he's not around. He went to the Primes. Yeah, in the other story, because Starscream was not supposed to be there. But that's fine. We referenced Earthspark as well and said that's going on the East Coast. So this is another Prime and another Megatron on the East Coast doing their thing. Yeah. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that.